Hello friends, welcome back to another video. Excuse my voice, I sound like Stevie Nicks or something today. I have a green juice, I think I'm getting sick. Are we gonna film anyway? Yes we are. I'm gonna eventually review all of Grady Hendrix's books. He's mainly known for his horror. Now his most recent book, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, actually came out in January of this year. You would think that that would have been more of like a fall release. It's fresh on my mind and I wanted to kind of take you through at least this one in particular, just so that if you are new to him, you kind of have an idea of, you know, what his books are like if you want to read him or not. He is the horror novelist who doesn't actually really write a lot of scary things. Like his horror is not really proper horror, like Stephen King horror. It's spoopy. It's silly, it's wacky, it's comedic, it's tongue-in-cheek. I prefer scary books and scary movies that are like kind of silly and poking fun at the genre and like satirizing the genre. Also, this is like paint swatches and stuff. Please ignore the whole situation. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is his most recent book. I have seen some people say that this is their favorite Grady Hendrix book. Let's see if this is as disgusting as I sound. Yeah. So this was not my favorite, but I was listening to the audiobook and I've seen a couple of reviews of people saying how they couldn't even get through the audiobook because of how dramatic the narrator is. It is a very dramatic reading, I will admit that. So that might be something to consider if that's like something that might annoy you. I have become slightly disillusioned with him over the course of my reading, because a lot of times, and this is a big thing that people talk about in their reviews when they leave like a mixed or negative review, is like his titles and the blurbs, like the synopsis of the book, portrays the book in a certain way, and then the actual product, like the actual content of the book, does not really deliver in a lot of ways. A lot of people have talked about how his marketing is really great. The whole marketing team knows what they're doing in terms of like his covers and the titles and the blurbs and everything, but then a lot of times what's actually in the book doesn't really live up to the promise or the hype. It kind of happened with this witchcraft book as well. There's not a lot of witchcraft, which is weird because, you know, witchcraft is like a word that's in the title. I think there's like two scenes where we actually directly see the characters doing some witchy things. Everything else is kind of presumed to be happening off page. So we have about 12 girls who are pregnant teenagers and they are sent off to the Wellwood home for girls in order to live out the full term of their pregnancy. And then give the baby up for adoption, essentially in secret, like away from society, because it takes place in the summer of 1970. And so there is a lot of stigma around teenage girls, unwed girls, being pregnant. It's essentially like Teen Mom meets The Craft, I would say. That's basically the book in a nutshell. As you can imagine, everything about the girls is monitored at this house. Everything that they're doing, eating, saying, all of it's being monitored by Miss Wellwood, who runs the home. And so a lot of the book is literally just their day-to-day lives, us learning about the backstories of all the characters. And a weird thing about that is that they are all given a new identity upon arrival. So our main character is a 15-year-old girl named Fern. That's not her real name. That name is given to her by Miss Wellwood. There's Rose, that's another character. Xenia is another character. They all have these like plant or like floral names. So the actual plot really begins when Fern meets the librarian. I want to say she comes to the home like once a week or something like that, to, you know, in order for the girls to have some sort of intellectual stimulation, and allows them to, you know, check out books. And there's a spell book. It's called How to Be a Groovy Witch. And Fern is very interested in this book, and the librarian kind of pushes it on her as well. The librarian, I think her name was Miss Parse, she really seems to understand the plight of the girls, and she seems like one of the only adults who is on their side. Every single adult, all of their parents, Miss Wellwood, the staff at the home, everybody looks down on them. They check out this book, And Fern is like, you know, I know it's silly, nothing's gonna come of it, but like it'll be fun, it's something to do, we're bored. They're basically clinging on to anything that could potentially improve their lives, even like a modicum amount. And so the first spell seems to work. It's almost like they're speaking Pig Latin, like that's kind of what it reminded me of. And they are able to transfer their sicknesses and all the things that they're feeling, you know, morning sickness and the back pain and all of that. They're able to do a spell that transfers that pain onto whoever they want. But then of course, as you might imagine, things take a dark turn. They start, you know, going further into this book chapter by chapter, and the spells get more intense and darker, and they end up actually very much going against Miss Wellwood's rules and sneaking out one night. I think they just end up in the woods or something to do a much bigger spell. This book is like 500 something pages, I'll say that. It was like a 15 or 16 hour audiobook. I remember seeing the time, I listened to it on Everand, and I remember seeing the time and being like, what? Why? Like, why is this not like a 12 or 13 hour book? It just seemed a little bit overlong, to be honest, and it's a slow burn for sure. Like I said, the whole beginning is very much just like us getting to know the girls. I do think it could have benefited from there being fewer girls. Like, it's fine to mention that there are like 12 girls in the house currently, but I think the fact that we tried to like get to know so many of them, this is one of the kind of pitfalls that Hendrix kind of falls into with his writing, because this happens with like every other one of his books as well, is his like character development isn't always super great. It's not super deep. He tends to stay surface level. Like the character development, the character arcs, they're not great. To me, that's a pretty high priority in a book in terms of my ultimate likability of the book and enjoyability of the book. Like that is the beating heart, like the literal beating heart of the book is your character, your main character. And so I think if we had maybe had fewer of them, we could have, you know, he hyper focuses on like 2 or 3 of them. And then again, there's not a lot of witchcraft happening. I don't know, like we get a couple of really drawn out scenes where there's a lot of lines of like, I truly do think it was like Pig Latin or something. And it was very much just them reading a spell. And then another thing I noticed in some of the reviews, even though the magic is obviously supposed to be there in order to empower them and give them some agency, a lot of people did talk about how it kind of feels like a 500-page book of just watching these girls suffer because of the way that they're treated and because they're uncomfortable the whole time, like physically in their bodies, they're just uncomfortable. And they're being kept there against their will, right? They're minors. They've been dropped off by their parents. They have no choice. You know, they didn't choose to be there. It's kind of a sad book. Like, it's a pretty dark, sad book. Most of his books are a little bit more lighthearted. They're a little bit more fun. They move a little bit quicker. And this one, just because of the content, did end up being a little bit more sad. I do think that, again, this is something I've noticed after reflecting on reading all of his work. He gets really hung up on these little, like, societal little issues. In this case, obviously, it was like the stigma around teen pregnancy, especially in the 70s. Those are kind of very subtly disguised rants that he goes on. They take up a lot of page time. That page time could be filled with plot, which would be more enjoyable for me personally as a reader. Like, for example, one of the reviews says, "I didn't pick up this book for a grim social critique. I wanted witches wreaking havoc." We also have, and this is something that I've gone back and forth on with his books in terms of, you know, calculating it into my rating, is a lot of his books take place in either like the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s. Culturally, societally, things were different. The way we talked about sexism, feminism, racism, all these different isms. Obviously in 2025, we talk about those things very differently. We see the world through a different lens. A lot of people criticize him for racism and sexism, and it's like, you know, on the one hand, yeah, it's kind of icky to read about those things, obviously. But then on the other hand, people are like, but the book takes place in the 80s or the 70s or whatever. So, you know, those things were a lot more prevalent, and we talked about those things in a much more like crass and overt way then. He does have a sort of magical Negro character in this book. Her name is Hagar, and she is the cook slash maid. She is running the house. It's not Miss Wellwood running the house. She owns the house, but Hagar is the one actually running the house, like cleaning the girls' bed sheets, cooking them literally every meal that they eat. This is a trope or like a stereotype that can come up where you have this sort of magical black character who we don't ever really get their background. We don't get any information about them except, you know, maybe their name and a physical description. They fade into the wallpaper in the background a lot. They don't get much page time at all, but then they randomly kind of come out of the shadows whenever our main characters need something. Now there is a young black mom there, a black teen mom. So Hagar's not the only black character, but it is something that I feel like should be mentioned. And they somehow manage to have just the solution to the problem, and they just somehow make all of the whatever the pickle is that the girls have gotten themselves into, she just manages to kind of help them get out of it, right? She's always got some sort of solution. But then she kind of disappears, and then we're back focused on the girls and whatever that they're doing. So I'm not going to spoil the ending. I'm not going to say any specifics about what happens or how it ends. I will comment on it, however. It wasn't like my favorite ending. We jump way forward in time, 20 years or 30 years, like something, like some crazy, like decades. We jump forward for just a single chapter. It is actually narrated by a woman who you can tell is elderly. They literally picked a new voice actor. There was a lot of action in those last couple of chapters that I was kind of like, well, where was this, you know, 100 pages ago or 200 pages ago? You've written, you know, 400 pages of a book, and then you realize like, oh, I have to like end this thing. Like I have to, this can't just like keep going on. And so then the author realizes like, oh, well, I have all these loose threads that I need to tie up. How am I going to do this? And so you'll literally get 2 or 3 chapters at the very end, like the last maybe hour of the book, of a, you know, 15-hour audiobook or whatever it was. The last hour was all these things happening kind of in a rush. It is by far not the witchiest book that you could be reading this Halloween. So if you are specifically looking for witchy, magical vibe kinds of books, this is not it. I wouldn't recommend it for that. I don't know. It fell a little bit flat for me, to be honest. And yeah, I felt like more like it was him trying to break down the sort of stereotype of the teen pregnancy stigma, but it's 2025 already, so I just don't know. I don't know exactly what he was trying to accomplish. He is pretty good about writing female characters in a respectful way, like not in an icky way. More popular, more lauded literary male writers don't do as good of a job writing about women as Grady Hendrix does. And that is where I'm gonna leave you, because I have a whole, like, full every book by Grady Hendrix type of video, like I did in my Chuck Palahniuk video, that I'm gonna do next or sometime soon. So I'm gonna leave this one here and dive into that video, so keep a lookout for that. I did like a spooky season TBR here recently, so you guys let me know what you are planning to read for Halloween. I am not someone who goes out on Halloween. I stay home and I chill and I put some vibey music on, Halloween kind of music, and I read a spooky book. So that is what my plans are. I don't know what your plans are. You guys can let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.